Yesterday I put out a letter to congressional senatorial staff in regards to the United States and their parallel authorities in Canada, along with our state officials, elected officials, and county officials regarding Port Roberts, Washington, and the exclave status that we currently have in this pandemic. The letter is out of concern with what seems to be happening more and more at the border with people being turned away that require to have transit, which is being defined as non-essential at this point in our time to go to our country. When I say that, I mean to the other side of our country or the mainland of the lower 48, middle of the 49th. So with that happening, it's becoming more of a concern that our community is becoming more isolated during this time and during this pandemic. And we're asking for assistance both from the United States and also Canadian officials to look at Point Roberts independently from the rest of our shared border on the 49th, and realize that our geographical isolation disproportionately affects us more than other border communities are seeing during this pandemic.
Is there one case in particular, one anecdote in particular that kind of highlights what you've seen?
Well, recently, with the lack of allowance being afforded for non-essential reasons to transit through Canada to the other part of the United States, just to come to mind, I'm not going to get into specifics with names or anything like that, but two individuals have approached me, and I've heard of a third within just the last week or 2 weeks that have happened where transit has been denied, that hasn't been deemed essential at the time.
So you and I have talked over the last several months. Are people still able to go to doctor's appointments, vet appointments, kind of those essential health appointments that I know that some people in Point Roberts need to go across the border for?
Yeah, I don't think any of that is being denied at this point. It's starting to be heavily questioned because I've been hearing that everybody seems to have doctor's appointments now in regards to the crossings. And I don't want that to become a reason for crossing that's not honest to any type of federal officer, whether it be CBSA or CBP. And due to the fact that more people are using those reasons as the transit purpose, I believe it's being questioned more now. I know that couples have tried to take their animals to the vet, and they've been questioned why two people need to take a dog or a cat to the vet, and one of them has been turned around, and the other has been allowed to go through to the veterinarian in the lower mainland or to the other side of the United States. I also understand that this has happened with doctor's appointments, that a husband and wife have been questioned at the border why both of them need to go to, whether it be just the wife's appointment or the husband's appointment or partners, that they're questioned why the other one needs to go as well. And I'm not sure if they've been allowed to transit together or if one of them has had to turn around and go home, and then the person with the appointment be directed through for that allowable transit through Canada. I also know that the border is asking for proof of doctor's appointments now, that people are having to bring letters with them, whether that be from their primary care physician or a specialist or a dentist, at that point to show that they truly do have an appointment in our country, just on the other side. And again, we have to transit over 20 miles of Canada to get there. So things are becoming more difficult. There's more questions that are being asked. And I definitely want to make sure that CBSA and CBP understand that I have the highest respect for their respective agencies and the men and women who staff the borders, because they're doing a very, very difficult job as well during this time, but their direction is being given to them from officials above their pay grades. So we have to understand that they're just trying to implement the things they're being asked to do within their respective governments or chain of command. And what I'm hoping that this can start is a new conversation on looking at ports of entry along the 49th parallel, which is the line we share with Canada, and looking at each port of entry independently within their region to make decisions on benefiting the cross-border communities and those people that live in different areas and may have challenges such as we do, which are, I think, only a couple places in the United States. But I think that would relax the fears that people are starting to have with being locked down, especially in my community, theoretically being under house arrest.
Is this all something that's escalated in the last month? Has it been going on longer?
Yeah, that's a pretty good time frame. I think maybe a month and a half. Obviously, I participate in cross-border meetings with our unified command system here, and we speak to CBSA and CBP every week, almost every week with CBSA, in regards to any changes that are coming up with the border. The information is pretty tight. It seems like even the information hits the news channels and the newspapers before the unified command structure actually knows the foundation of that date. Sometimes, not always. But I'm hoping that our countries can work together and better in order to fulfill what we have within our community, the need of open transit to get to the main part of our country.
Everything's still okay with, I know you and I have talked about things like food and gas and that kind of stuff getting into Point Roberts. Are you still okay there?
Yeah, I don't know of any challenges there. I do know that our grocery store has had a few missed deliveries. You know, they may have one delivery versus two a week. And we're looking at probably definitely over 50% of the business that the grocery store has. And realistically, the other businesses within Point Roberts, you know, comes from the international influx. And if our community continues to be locked down and not have any type of that type of commerce coming into our community, then I don't see our businesses being able to survive within the numbers that we have. We have 5 filling stations or fuel stations within Point Roberts. I believe we have 7 parcel locations, which is mailing locations in Point Roberts that realistically survive on the international mailings that they get from the lower mainlands and people picking up their parcels here in Point Roberts. If not for, we don't have 7 parcel locations because of 1,000 people that live in Point Roberts full time. Those businesses and the restaurants and the cafes that we have and the fuel stations and even the grocery store, along with construction and everything else. I mean, we have a lot of home businesses here too that survive on the international influx.
That was about all I wanted to cover. Is there anything else that you think is important?
I think, you know, our community was prepared for the first 2 to 3 months that was perceived that this is going to last. And now that it's going into projectively the rest of 2020, maybe into 2021, and having the border restrictions we're starting to see increase for the definition of essential travel. I think the mental health of my community is going to be challenged, not only with adults, but also the children who live within my community and go to school in the lower mainland. Their inability to participate in sports that their classmates are now able to start up in the lower mainland, and they're not able to go to those events because the sporting events are considered non-essential. The education, though, is considered essential, so our children should not have that do go to school in the lower mainland of Vancouver or British Columbia. They should still be able to go to those schools that they've had in the past. But mental health is going to become a larger issue for my community and maybe even to a humanitarian level at some point, depending on how long this essential travel or the border restrictions continue.
And it's still COVID-free, not a single positive test?
As far as I know, we are still a COVID-free community. Everybody that we've tested close to 500 people now within my community, with some of those being repeat tests, because we do have people that travel outside of Point Roberts and outside of the States and British Columbia for work. And they come back into our community and get retested when they're home. So at this point, with around 500 people tested, all of those testings have come back with no COVID detected.
I'm just going to hit stop here on the record, and I just had a couple kind of logistical follow-up questions, so hold on.